All right, so now we're going to start to get into some of the exciting parts of community ecology. We talked about niches and species overlapping and competition and how that's always happening. And if there's plentiful resources, then we get into resource partitioning. Fantastic. And these dynamics are constantly changing, they're never static. That's just the nature of community ecology. One of the relationships that is guaranteed to be in every community is the predator-prey relationship. Okay, so no matter what community you look at, two species are going to interact. At minimum, there's two, usually there's hundreds, and we will always see a predator-prey relationship. This is because of energy flow. Everything has to eat. It consumes nutrients. The producer base consumes organic and inorganic molecules, sunlight, CO2, water to establish the base of the food chain. And we're going to get into this a lot more in additional lectures. But then something eats that food base. Something eats the next thing. Something eats the next thing. Those relationships of this individual eating that individual is predator-prey. Okay, so let me jump out. I'm going to show you a little video on nature that kind of encapsulates the predator-prey relationship.
Jaguars have been known to paddle hundreds of yards, crossing open water to get to tropical islands. In captivity, they can dive for more than 30 seconds, even consuming food while they're underwater.
Okay, so check it out. Think about the evolutionary
With their aquatic
adaptations.
skills and powerful bite, jaguars were able to take on prey their canine rivals couldn't tackle. The caiman, an ancient crocodilian that grows to more than 12 feet long.
Okay, so the caiman and the jaguar live in the same environment. They are competing for similar resources. That would be interspecific
For
competition.
millions of years, caiman had been the apex predator. Then the hunter became the hunted.
But can one species start to outcompete the other? Well, I guess if you
This extraordinary act of predation was filmed by a tourist in Brazil's Pantanal and has become an internet sensation.
I mean, I guess if you kill and eat your competition, that's definitely one way to outcompete them. So think about how cool is that kind of stuff. That's what we see happening all the time in community ecology. All right, so again, remember predator-prey relationship. I want to give you a number, tattoo this to your forearm, whatever you need to do. When we talk about energy flow, I want you guys to remember this thing called the 10% rule. Energy moves from one level in the food chain to the next on a 10% rule. And I'll have a full lecture over dynamics of ecosystems and energy flow. All right, so these relationships between predator and prey cause what we call a cyclical pattern of population growth and decline. So populations are going to go up, populations will go down based on each other. But something really to stress here, to stress, not de-stress. The relationship we're looking at here, this predator-prey, they influence each other without a doubt, but they're not mutually exclusive. So here's a scenario. You follow the red line or maroon line, whatever color we want to call that. It's kind of close. This is your predator, your lynx. Their population goes up because there's more food from the prey. So as the snowshoe hare, the prey species, as their population goes up, the lynxes have an easier time finding food, getting resources for the lynx babies, and the lynxes are more likely to achieve biotic potential. But as the lynx stress the prey population, they eat a bunch of the baby, as they eat a bunch of the baby snowshoe hares, they maybe overconsume too many of the offspring, kill the parents, mom gets eaten, etc., then that causes the prey population to go down. And when that prey population goes down, there's less food for the lynx. So now the lynx are fighting each other, competing against each other, trying to get food for themselves and their offspring. They're going to have fewer kids the next generation, and their populations are going to go down. So we see this oscillation, this wave effect. The prey population will go up faster because they tend to be type 2 or type 3 survivorships. They tend to have lots of offspring relative to predators. And then the predator population lags behind. All right, there's a bunch of extra prey out there. Now I can increase my population as a predator. Uh-oh, I overshot carrying capacity, and maybe I ate too many of the prey, and now all of a sudden my predator population is going down. Go back to the reindeer on the island. Excuse me, that's a predator-prey relationship right there. Predator, the reindeer. Prey, the food base, the producer base, the lichens, the vegetation. They overshot it. They overconsumed. So we always want to keep in mind these relationships and how these things work together. But we do need to throw in other factors. What happens if we get a harsh winter and all of a sudden the temperature drops? That may lower the carrying capacity of that environment because of a bad winter. And that also impacts the size of the prey population and the predator population. So it's not just a black and white. Don't think, well, if I kill all the coyotes in Illinois, we're going to have plenty of rabbits. You'll have a little increase in rabbit population, but there's going to be hawks that are going to benefit. There's going to be owls that are going to benefit. There's going to be all the other predators of the rabbits that benefit. And bottom line, the number one issue, and we'll get into this with conservation, we'll spend a lot of time on this, is the habitat. If you don't give those rabbits more habitat, I don't care if you eliminate every single predator in Illinois, their population's not going to explode and have rabbits everywhere because they don't have a place to live. Habitat's a number one issue when we talk about population sizes. So again, conservation biology topic. Those of you interested, a couple more lectures. We're going to come back to this and talk about these issues. So, all right, we often feel sorry for prey and go, oh, that poor little hare is getting killed and eaten, and that's so sad. But I want you to think about it. If the prey were defenseless, they'd all be dead. Prey have defense mechanisms. They have ways to survive. So this spring, in the next month, you're going to have little baby deer born, these little fawns. And they're incredibly difficult to see. Why? Because of camouflage. Camouflage is basic genetics. Mom and dad passed on the genes for that baby fawn to be spotted and blend into the environment. Good genetics means you survive. Bad camouflage, you're easier to be picked off by a predator. Okay, the next picture, this is actually one that was taken during one of our marine biology trips. When we snorkel, we usually snorkel out in a line. The first 4 people swam right over the top of this fish. If they were predators, they died because they didn't eat that day. They starved to death. The other people who saw it have a chance as a predator to get something to eat. But this is an awesome defense mechanism, and it's back to genetics. So I'm going to give you guys 3 seconds to see if you can find dinner here. If you can't, you're dead. You starve to death. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Did you find food? So what you're looking at is an example of a thing called, oops, make sure I can spell it right, cryptic coloration. There's a fish here. It's called a flounder. Here's the outline. Tail's right there. Eyes right there. Remember that bony plate we call an operculum right there. Okay, so see it? Can you see it now? If you can't, as a predator, you're probably dead. You can't find food. So again, there's another prey defense. We're not defenseless as prey. We've evolved mechanisms to keep us alive. Otherwise, all the prey die, predators starve to death. This was a cool afternoon at the zoo in Kansas, watching the meerkats. They took turns. This one stood up and was on guard duty while these 3 slept in the shade. So I sat and watched them for about half an hour. When this one started falling asleep, he kicked this guy awake and said, "Your turn, take over." So all of you who are in the military, think about how military operations work. When you're in a dangerous environment, you take turns defending each other. It's an awesome defense system, group defense. Can't do it if you're by yourself. But when you live in a social environment, a group social environment, it works. All right, let's check out something called the living shield. Schools of fish. So those of you who are fishermen, think about a school of minnows, or what we call bait fish. Thousands of fish swimming around. It's hard to focus on one. If any of you have ever gone out hunting or walking through the woods and you've had quail bust out of the woods in front of you, first thing you do is wet yourself. Then you go, oh my God, and you're trying to focus, and there's 10 birds flying in all different directions. They're distracting the predator. That's the living shield. The muskox here, they group up as a team, and they go shoulder to shoulder to keep the wolves from getting inside of their defensive shield. And the young, the sick, the injured, the old, they're all on the inside of that circle there. These are all prey animals, prey species that have evolved defense mechanisms. Okay, so, all right, maybe I live by myself, but I'm going to warn you. I'm going to tell you I'm bad. Don't mess with me. If I'm a small little frog, poison dart frog, living in the rainforest, and I'm bright orange or bright red, that means, hey, dummy, don't mess with me. So you guys want to warn people don't mess with you? Wear bright clothing. Go out there with that neon jacket, that bright red hat on, and say, don't mess with me. We use bright colors as a warning in our society. Red stoplight, red traffic cone, safety, orange vests. It's a warning signal. Prey species have evolved these warning signals to let other predators know, don't mess with us. Okay, so lots and lots of different mechanisms to help defend themselves. Last major one that I'll talk about, and then I'll get into how different species actually copy each other, a thing called mimicry. These are urchins. These are called the black spiny or long spiny, officially Diadema is the genus, but these are urchins. They're herbivores, members of Echinodermata, the Echinoidea. So hopefully it looks familiar, sounds familiar, water vascular system. Well, these guys have hundreds of these little spines sticking off of their body to protect themselves. They move around eating algae on the reef, and then when a predator comes by, the diadema will rotate their spines and position their spines in front of the predator to keep the predator at bay. Okay, so what I want you to do is go into the Community Ecology Phase 2 PowerPoint for the rest of this lecture. I'm going to split it into 2 phases. That way the file sizes are not so large.